Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Daily Objective. We got some big news to talk about out of Brazil. Better brush up on your Spanish salsa dancing on your way to Portuguese class because we've got somebody straight out of Brazil, but he speaks English, so don't worry. Please welcome Mateus Pacini. Is that correct, or is that like more of an Italian pronunciation?
More of an Italian pronunciation, but that's good.
Would it be Pacini?
Pacini. We normally use that here.
All right, so you pronounce a C like a normal person, not like those Italians who they like to add an invisible H. What's with those people? Anyway, we might have Mark Pellegrino joining us soon, so that's pretty exciting. He must be a big star over there in your country.
Yeah, I work with Objectivism Brazil. We interviewed him last month about art and movies, so
very nice.
All at home.
Very cool. Yeah, technology is amazing, and which is why we want to preserve liberty. We want to preserve capitalism and the rights of the individual, and that's where you come in. So what's happening? What's the news out of Brazil? Who ran? Was it down to two candidates like in most countries? Was it like two major candidates, or was it multiple parties like in some countries? Please explain the situation. Lead us up to who actually won, and then lay it on me.
Perfect. So our party system allows for many candidates. So we don't have a two-party system like the US, for example. But the real fight was between two candidates: Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, which you probably know, and Bolsonaro, who is the actual president till the end of the year at least. So at the end of the day, the election was yesterday, Lula got 47% of the vote, valid votes, excluding people who didn't vote, etc. And Bolsonaro got 43%. So what it means is that as there was no candidate who got more than 50% plus one, so there will be a second round at the end of October. So now we have a new election period, like 25 days for a new campaign.
That's disappointing to me that there's no winner, but is that pretty much normal in Brazil?
Yes, it's really difficult for a candidate to be elected in the first round, at least for president. If we had also elections in the state level and for deputies and senators from all over the country. So the biggest states like São Paulo, they go to the second turn, and for example, my state where I live in, Rio Grande do Sul, also goes to the second round. So we are going to be having to vote for two different people for our governor and the president as well. So.
Okay. Now, in places like England and Canada, the president doesn't really do very much. They're just kind of a figurehead. The prime minister has a lot more power. In America, the president is the commander in chief, and he can sign executive orders, and he could veto or approve legislation. Is the president of Brazil similarly powerful?
Yes, it is quite similar to the US. We have the two houses, the Senate and the Câmara dos Deputados, in Portuguese, so the deputies, the second chamber, right? The superior and inferior chamber. And the president is really the commander-in-chief, the executive branch, for sure. So it is quite similar to the US in this regard. In the sense of the structures, the big structures, our voting system and how candidates are allotted, it's totally different from the US, because we are not a Republican. So we don't have a Republican system, we have a democracy. So in this sense, it's different. But in terms of the three main branches, it's almost the same. I mean, the result is the same.
Now, Greg in the chat says, Jesus, can't Brazil pick good candidates for once? That's a good question. Can you tell me about these candidates in terms of what they represent? Is the best of the Brazilian candidates like worse than anyone running in America or in England as a frame of reference, or how would you describe the major players?
Well, Lula was president for 8 years in the early 2000s. He was responsible for the biggest corruption scandal in the world. He really organized a pyramid scheme involving practically 70% of both houses that were receiving bribes and other things. He himself and his kids were involved in other corruption scandals as well. He went to jail, and our Supreme Court found a miraculous way to forgive him for the crimes, and that allowed him to become a candidate again. So this I won't bother to explain it, because it will be, I would look like a fool, because nobody can understand, coming from studying law, to understand what happened. Technically, in a few words, they technically found some administrative wrongdoings in terms of how the judgment was organized. So it was not that Lula was became innocent because he was proven not guilty, but because they found a way to turn around the system and find an excuse for him to
technicality, like they forgot to read him his rights when they were putting the handcuffs on him.
You could understand like that.
But what did he represent in terms of the ideology, if any? Did people see him as a free market guy, or is there such a thing? Is he a social issues candidate?
Lula is close friends with all the dictators in the left in Latin America. He's the chief the chief commander, the main representative of the left in Latin America, in the world, I might say. So he would be like, I'm not sure if he would represent like a Biden figure in the US, but more extremist and more capable of expressing himself than Biden. So I mean, he's really good at rhetoric.
Oh, okay. So nothing like Biden in some way. Like, Biden is not really good at anything. He's kind of like the least threatening Democrat. They wanted to just sort of have someone that doesn't come off too extreme in any way, and that Republicans wouldn't mind voting for because they were tired of Trump. I mean, I'm bringing this up because like Biden kind of represents nothing, whereas it sounds like Lula is he's kind of a leftist ideologue, or at least he represents the leftists in a major way.
He's not an intellectual by any means. He came from in the 80s. He rose as a union leader in Brazil, in the interior of São Paulo state.
Union leader?
Yeah, union leader. He built all his political career technically representing the workers. His party is called Workers' Party.
Kind of a populist, is that a good word to describe him?
Exactly, perfect.
Now, populism is on the rise everywhere. I'm not happy to say. It seems like populism is the way of the present and possibly of the future. And I've heard that in South America, populism is making gains as well. Would you say he is the populist? Lula, is he the populist in that race, or is it kind of like everyone playing the same populist game?
I mean, well, to introduce then the other candidate is Bolsonaro. Bolsonaro got elected. He's also populist at the end of the day, but he got elected more of a free market conservative platform. Many friends of mine, for example, worked with the minister of the economic ministry, and so he got to do many free market reforms here, easing the possibility of doing business. But at the end of the day, he's just more of a populist of the right, like a Trump figure without businesses. So he's not a business person. He's like a politician, a career politician.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
he never did anything really meaningful in his life. He was always, he entered like representing, he always won elections, like deputy, for example, technically representing the military over the years for more than 20 years. But he is no real representative of anything.
Yeah, he's kind of empty, but tends to maybe be a little bit better policy-wise. Is he? Would you say he's what they call a protectionist? Like, does he try to protect jobs from going overseas, or is that not really in the vocabulary of Brazilians?
No, I could not say that. I mean, he was elected like a nationalist, like a patriotic guy, representing. They like to use those word values, family. You know, that conservative trident. You know, say that. So he's really close to religion, religious and evangelicals, Catholics and evangelicals. A little bit of free markets and conservatives. So it's kind of a mix of something that is not the left. So it's a little bit of everything that is not left per se. So
I didn't know there were evangelicals in South America. Is that happening? Is that over there?
I mean, I think in 10 to 15 years, probably they are going to get bigger than Catholics in Brazil.
Oh, wow.
So, and many churches, many Brazilian churches have like other branches in Africa, in the United States, in Europe. So, but it's here in Brazil, at least, I think in the US is the same, but in both chambers there is that lobbying group. So you have the agribusiness lobby, the religious, the conservative lobby. And so it's here in Brazil, to win an election, you need to sell your soul to the biggest bidder and see what happens. So that's what's going to happen here in the second round. Today, we have the start of these side negotiations to get people to go to one side or the other. And so it's kind of difficult to imagine what's going to happen.
Yeah, is abortion is it legal? Is it up? Is it on the ballot? In America, the Supreme Court overturned the famous Roe v. Wade decision, enabling the states to outlaw abortion altogether. I think 10 or 11 US states have since banned abortion. So we're so advanced in that way. We're like the leaders of the free world that way, going into the doctor's office and telling women, adults, what they can do. Back to Brazil, though, what's the attitude? They're very religious, it sounds like. So what's the attitude towards
here
abortion?
It's a difficult topic. We are a highly religious. 95% of the population identify themselves as religious in some sense. Not only evangelicals, Catholics, but any other denomination you might use. So it is kind of a difficult topic to discuss. It was not discussed the same way you did in the US. I mean, in other countries, for example, Argentina, Chile, Colombia, they were discussed. I think in Argentina they passed a law similar to the US, but here in Brazil it was not touched, especially in election year. Probably Bolsonaro wouldn't even dare to consider bringing this discussion up front. So, and the left itself didn't want to do it either, because they have a strong support inside the Catholic Church, especially coming from the 70s and the 80s with the theology.
I mean, the fact that leftists in the West, I'll say America and Western Europe, or at least America, I'll speak. The fact that leftists support abortion rights, I think, is almost just like a matter of happenstance, if that word can be translated.
Yeah, because both when you, for example, when you discuss in general abortion, normally the left, it is not a principled defense of abortion. It's just we just want women to be able to cut their body the way they want. as much as they want. So we don't value any kind of reflection on values itself. So it's just do whatever you want with your body. We don't care. And the like the Christian, the Catholic defense is that it is a value per se, and we cannot kill babies and stuff like that. So both sides don't have a compelling case to allowing or banning anything. So it's just this semantic discussion. So, for example, there is no discussion like for example, in a objectivist sense, in the sense of you understanding the meaning of being a father as a value to you or not. So this kind of philosophical discussion at this higher level, it doesn't happen. So it's just people trying to kill babies or letting them just pop up, and then you put them on the welfare state and let they survive as parasites.
Is abortion illegal in Brazil?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Completely.
Yes. You can't. No, you can. For example, if there's some kind of I forgot the word now, rape or stuff like that. Yes, it's allowed.
There are exceptions.
But yeah, there are some exceptions. But overall, there are no abortion clinics everywhere and stuff like that. So
I don't have to ask if gay people can get married in Brazil. I'm guessing they cannot because of how religious it is, or am I wrong?
In terms of the state level, it's okay.
Oh,
you can marry, no problem. But inside the church, no. At least I haven't seen any marriage. But really, this thing about gay people, it's commonplace, I think, as it is in all over the world. So
yeah, just Americans are, we've had change is hard. We're a little bit uncomfortable with it even still. But yeah, but that sounds like good news about the separation of church and state. That such a religious society wouldn't make a fuss over gay people going to the courthouse.
Yeah, they just can't go to the church to get married. But officially, there's all the law recognition of this kind of relationship as a heterosexual relationship is. So no difference there.
So there's no real election results. Did you say the one with the highest percentage was Lula, the leftist populist? Okay, but he didn't get enough of the vote. He got 43%, but he needs 51 or at least over 50.
Yeah, 50 plus one. But we have important results in the sense that, for example, in both chambers, in both houses, Bolsonaro got the majority over PT, over Workers' Party. So, but it didn't resonate as Bolsonaro winning the overall election. So overall, it was Bolsonaro had like a political victory in the state and federal level in these both chambers, but he was not able to make that to become elected president, to be in front of Lula at the end of the day, because here in Brazil, I'm not sure in the US, but people here don't have clear ideologies. The median voter doesn't have a clear ideology, so they vote on people. And Lula has all this stigma of protecting workers and fighting for the poor, which is a lie, but people believe. So that's why probably he got ahead of Bolsonaro.
So in America, I could sort of trace like the development of America's history with like which philosophical schools were prevalent. And anytime you generalize about a period of history, you're going to overgeneralize because the truth is nuanced and there's so many people doing so many things. But I would say America was founded by like Enlightenment thinkers. The pragmatists, the American pragmatists kind of became the dominant school, probably, and then the postmodernists maybe took over sometime in the 60s. I think that's a basically agreeable generalization. Could you think of like the philosophical schools that sort of tend to dominate in Brazil, or is that not something you've looked into?
I'm not a specialist on that, but Brazil has a rather different origin, more of a continental journey, coming from example Kant and many thinkers from Spain, Portugal, France. So we have a kind of a different perspective, a different origin than the US. So we don't share Enlightenment values. Our constitution is from the start. We had some hints of monarchies, some good insights of monarchies, but then it all went lost. We had more than 8 constitutions so far in less than 500 years, and the last one from the 80s is deeply statist and interventionist, so it gives a lot of rights and no duties. So basically, that's how the context for the election of a guy like Lula is much more this interventionist origin. For example, Brazil was colonized by Portugal, and it was always a colony. Our independence was like Portugal was a failed state, and they could not be here anymore. So the king left, and we had some guys who decided to take over, but there is no. I think there are many studies trying to create like a Brazilian root and a Brazilian monarchical origin, but it's really difficult to trace like a single root up to our days. We lack a little bit of an identity like a nation. So
yeah,
maybe it's because we just don't know how to find this root, ignorance, but at the end of the day, I think we don't have like a clear path like the US did, because as you said, there are the alignment influence, and then after some time there are some roots along the way. You get to one side or the other, but you have like a clear reference point of reference. In Brazil, it's not that clear, at least for me.
Yeah, America is easier because it's the, as I think Ayn Rand pointed out, the first and only country to be founded like on a principle rather than just circumstantially which gang happened to take over. It sounds like Brazil, like most countries, are kind of there by luck of the draw in essence. But that doesn't mean that the future cannot be bright. Doesn't mean Brazil can't have an excellent constitution in the future. Because as someone once wrote a book called "The Earth is Flat," I haven't read it, but I think the point of the book was that communication is making the world a much smaller place. And he was writing this in like the late 90s, I think, or early 2000s. Imagine what he would say today. The world is flat today. We can be having this conversation over the internet. You guys could be reading Ayn Rand over there and surpassing the Americans in Enlightenment values before long. Let's hope.
Yeah, no, I totally believe that. I've been working with Objectivism Brazil for more than 5 years, translating content, Rand's books, and from other intellectuals as well. So we are having an impact, but it's in terms of politics, for example, there is a private party here called Novo, like new in English. And they decided to create like a private company, AQA party. So they are trying to instill good values and fight for private property, freedom, and stuff like that. It's kind of difficult overall because a normal problem is that most of the time, people in general and parties last till they don't have clear principles. So you get together with many people. You technically share some appreciation for freedom or private property. So you just write down and you try to organize a party like a pro-freedom party. But at the end of the day, your own values conflict with the same people inside your party because it's not clear, which is the libertarian problem overall.
Yeah,
you just open up that big umbrella and you accept everything, And at the end of the day, when you have to decide, your differences start to rise up, and you see that it's not going to work as smooth as you wanted.
Well, that brings up my next question. So in America, the prominent objectivists want nothing to do with anarchists and most libertarians, or if they do want something to do with libertarians, they want to be very clear on why objectivists are not libertarians. But the impression I get of, let's say, some place like South America or like various parts of Europe, from the glimpses I've gotten into like what the objectivist action in those places, that there's sort of like a lowered expectation, just because like it's such a dire situation, or there's just so little objectivist action that basically anyone who's like sort of free market, like people are like, all right, come on in. I'm just wondering, is that it? Would you say you're like sensitive to the differences or the problems of anarchists? Is there an objectivist presence in which the membership or the people, they're like, we're not anarchists. We don't want to hang out with von Mises Institute or the equivalent?
I'm gonna give my personal example, and then you can take your conclusions. For example, I manage Objectivism Brazil, but at the same time I have a master's in economics on Austrian economics. So I have a pretty good relationship with all libertarians and overall, but I always try to make things clear on the difference between both sides. I think overall we agree on economics, for example, with Mises. But in the philosophical level, we have deep differences that it doesn't mean that we need to fight against each other, but it means that you need to be clear on where you stand and what are the consequences. Because if you take, for example, Hayek, Mises seriously, you're going to see that they have many problematic philosophical problems, structures they consider. For example, Mises with the Kant one, Hayek with Hume. So you need to be really clear on that, and you can have this discussion. I think we can join forces in terms of economics, but not much more than that in a deep sense. And here in Brazil, we get along well. I mean, objectivism, of course, you see what is going to happen, because we have this passion for reality. So, which is something that most libertarians are not able to do. But overall, libertarians here in Brazil, they just are worried about politics and economics, as most libertarians.
I would imagine the word libertarian means something different, because in America, it was sort of like this 1960s or 70s movement that had certain hippie influences or whatever influences it had. And it emerged within the American culture, kind of with whatever influences it had. In South America, the word libertarian could mean something completely different when people use it, and the origins of it. And so...
No, in Brazil, for example, in Latin America overall, I mean, we got the meaning from the US. I mean, there are many institutes from the US who have branches here in Brazil. So technically, we did not diverge in terms of the meaning of the word. So most of the concepts came from translations. So we just we are still. They are still trying to get like a Brazilian twist, like of having a Brazilian identity, libertarian identity. But so far, I can technically say that what we have here is close to what you have in the US. The only difference,
Go ahead.
It is, for example, when you talk about liberal, in Brazil we preserve the original meaning of liberalism, which is different from you guys in the US. But that's the right difference.
And I think that's been changing the last few years, especially in the Trump era, the populist era. The word liberal has been used more frequently to mean individualist, or like return to something before the lobby system or before the majority rule, whatever. So I think America is sort of rediscovering, especially the more the left becomes anti-liberal, like explicitly so, the more the left uses the word liberal as a pejorative. the more the word liberal is up for grabs. So I think that's been changing in America. And I guess a point I'm also making about libertarians is like the motivations for becoming a libertarian might be different in America versus South America. I like how I use the word America just to mean the United States. I hope you guys don't take it the wrong way. But I mean, when you're living in the United States and you don't appreciate the success of, you don't appreciate what it signifies, and you hate the state so much that you'd rather see it all burn, and you align yourself with all these freaks among libertarians, that could mean something very different than someone in South America where, you know, it's all so alien at that point, and capitalism is still really an unknown ideal, way more so than the United States. So I could imagine someone becoming a libertarian in South America with more benign motivations. But hey, I mean, it's all really speculation on my part because I haven't been.
No, I mean, for example, in Brazil, the most libertarians came to this conclusion over those catchphrases like to pay taxes is theft, and you should fight the state. Here most of libertarians are more of an anarcho-capitalist sort.
Mm-hmm.
So they are not. There are some classical liberals, but I would dare say that most libertarians here are more Rothbard than Mises,
Mm-hmm.
for example. And so most of the time it's just the state has such a big grasp on your life and the things you want to, everything you want to do, you need to get a permit, a license, and so you have to pay higher taxes. We have like an income tax of more than 40%. Mm-hmm. So for companies a little bit lower, like 33 or something. So this is the main motivation of people trying to defend liberty and more freedom overall. It's just they are tired of having the weight of the state on their shoulders. So that's the main the basic motivation. It doesn't have I think it's not the same in the US, but here is the main motivation.
That sounds good enough. Yeah, like I saw a comment left on a previous episode of the show by a Polish objectivist, or someone who comments in the objectivist circles from Poland, saying when Rothbard was translated into Polish, it's full of footnotes saying like trying to explain how Rothbard could say, you know, Poland attacked the Soviet Union, like all these warped interpretations of events that people like Rothbard would commit to paper. Now that it was being translated into Polish, like the translator needed to like explain to them or justify it or in some way acknowledge how ridiculous it's going to come off to them living over there. But yeah, I have good relationships with anarchists too, not intellectually or as part of any movement, but I hang out with them here in Austin, Texas. They're most of the friends I've made. I think consider themselves anarchists, and they're not even anarchists. It's weird. It's like they don't even really want anarchy. They just I think they kind of use it as an excuse to never do the right thing. Like they get to like root or like apologize for Vladimir Putin, same way that the old anarchists used to apologize for the Soviet Union. Like you can only really justify, you know, rooting for someone like Trump if you're a pro-liberty guy. You can root for, because, well, we hate the state anyway, so good. If Trump is ruining America, good. It's like, at least, you know, the leftist authoritarians are going to cry and we'll drink their tears. There's something, I struggle to understand anarchists a lot, but hey, it's all good. We're here to promote something positive. We're not here to dispel anarchy. Yeah. We got a few super chats. Jonathan Honig, thank you for that. Christopher Smith, thank you. Marilyn, thank you. Phil with £5 says Brazil could have fabulous resources with freedom for innovators. Yeah. What is the state of what's it like doing business in Brazil? Is it a business friendly place, or is that changing over time?
I think the Bolsonaro government had many improvements in this sense. So many Bolsonaro and his team were able to abolish many stupid regulations. There was something called the pro-freedom law, which was meant really to simplify business up to the municipal level, to the city level. So there was like a big hierarchic impact, not just on the federal level in the sense of the government, the federal government, but in all three dimensions. And we have good macroeconomic indicators. Right now, we have one of the lowest inflations in the world, and the employment is going down. We didn't reach the pre-COVID numbers, but it is along that way. So there are many things, and the Brazilian people are really innovative. We are still one of the places where you can find more startups in the world, people trying to be entrepreneur. So overall, Brazilians have a good like sense of life. I mean, I was talking to Tal. So funny. Last week we had the Ayn Rand conference here in Brazil, in São Paulo, and he was commenting that he liked to walk around and they see like a good sense of life. Brazilians overall, they want to be happy. They like to. We are educated, like in Brazil, we are educated differently from other sides of the places in the world. We are more of an outward culture, so we know a lot of things that are going on outside of Brazil. So, for example, in 2008, I went to Canada to do an interchange to learn English better. And there were many people from Asia and Europe, and they just knew about their country. Like you were talking to a guy from Korea, they didn't even know what Brazil meant. I mean, they just knew that we played soccer or something like that. And Brazilians on the other side, they are more outside bound. So we always know what's going outside, especially in the US. Many people go to the US and go to Europe. They like to travel. I mean, there are many poor people as well, but at least you know we have a good context of the world around us. So in that sense, we try to be connected as much as we can to the
are most Brazilians educated in a public school?
Yes. Yes,
like a government school.
Yeah, it's not good quality at all, but there are exceptions. We have more private schools as well. We don't have voucher system like in the US, so the government pays for the entire structure of the public schools, including teachers, the building, etc. So the parents don't have like a choice. To put, so not a good incentive.
The American public schools have, like, the more you learn about the influences that went into the development of the teaching techniques, the more horrified you get. It's like a science fiction dystopia, like the way Americans are educated. I went to American public school, for most of high school, and was kind of like really surprised at how allergic to principles and coherent thinking Americans are. So in like a good way, it's prevented Americans from embracing, something like communism, something like a real horrible ideology. But at the same time, it's also made it very difficult to penetrate the sort of American consciousness, because even if you could convince an American, like, oh yeah, like here's what Ayn Rand says, and they say, oh yeah, I agree with all that, but then they also believe many other things that conflict with all that. Do you know much about, did you grow up in like a Brazilian public school? Could you comment on, is there something in there that resembles like a Montessori independent thinking training, or any comment on the style of education?
No, we don't have this kind of a Montessori like education. I mean, in many regards, we suffered the same problems that the students in the US suffer nowadays. We have a more of a Vygotskian sense of the school is not a place to learn. It's a place for people to get together and to respect the difference, more of a progressivist perspective. So at the end of the day, the main goal of the school is inclusion, not teaching, not learning. So at the end of the day, you can imagine what comes out of that. So people have, students overall have a really difficult, they have problems to interpret texts, to do math. So even the basics is not well grounded. I studied in a private school, and here in Brazil, which is changing over time, but we have a more like a globalized. So we learn a little bit of everything, but it's not integrated. Right. So you can, for example, you are watching a documentary on Netflix on biology. So people are talking about biology, and you remember some concepts like a membrane and liver and stuff like that. So, but you don't have like a clear understanding of why, for example, at a student level, you would use that in the rest of your life. You don't learn logic. So to be able to really integrate everything that goes on and try to form yourself, form your knowledge like in a spiral theory, like Peikoff would say, you are not able, you don't get the tools to become that kind of thinker. So you need to go to get that outside. So there are many, I mean, Paulo Freire, which was a thinker in Brazil, had an impact in the US education as well. He was a Marxist. If you look at, you might find him messing up with your education as well. So there is always a place for this kind of ideas.
All right, I got two more questions. How did you discover Ayn Rand, and at what age?
I discovered Ayn Rand in. I started as a libertarian, so I started in 2005 when I started studying economics, and then I didn't know exactly why. I know I wanted to defend liberty and economic freedom. So I started translating things like Mises and Hayek and etc. But then I continued translating for more than 10 years, more or less. And in 2015, I considered that something was missing. So differently from many people, I didn't start with Ayn Rand. There is a book also with this title in English. But I didn't start with Ayn Rand. I started with the Austrians and other thinkers. And due to a lack of an ethical defense of capitalism, I ended up knowing Rand and got to know her idea. So I have like I don't have 10 years of objectivist studies so far. So that's why I had this different perspective, different origin.
And the translations you're doing are into Portuguese, and is it basically a universal Portuguese, like they could understand it reading it in Portugal or other parts of the world?
I translated The Virtue of Selfishness. So it can be read in Portugal. We have a different kind of a different language, so it's sometimes you have problems to read in. For example, Brazilians read in Portuguese from Portugal, but overall you could get the idea. I mean, it's not that different as like Portuguese and Spanish. So you can understand. In Portugal, there are no books. There are just, I think, Atlas Shrugged, but not much. And in Brazil, books are being translated as we speak, literally. So we have some like 3 to 4 books on fiction. The 3 books on fiction, and non-fiction we have 4 or 5, but there's still a lot to be translated.
Well, Americans have a similar language barrier with England, and the solution we found is that the British read all of our books and we read none of theirs. Final question. What's the objectivist presence in Brazil? Is it a big movement? Is it growing? Is there a focus on philosophy in addition to economics? Like, are there philosophy professors that, philosophers, career philosophers that are objectivist or take Rand seriously? You get what I'm asking? Describe the facts on the ground. What's the situation?
We are still a young movement. I mean, for example, the translation of Atlas Shrugged, it was made like at the end of the 90s. I mean, there was a previous translation, but was not really read by many people. So the ideas came back in the end of the 90s, the early 2000s. But as I said, the real translations restarted like a year ago. So I've been working with Objectivism Brazil for 4 years now. We have a decent following, but we don't have we still have to build the intellectuals, to create the intellectuals. We don't have that right now. So this is how we stand. For example, it's different from the Ayn Rand Center UK, where you have so many people knowledgeable of objectivism getting together to do something. Here in Brazil, in Portuguese, we don't have that. We don't have that much people capable of like represent, like a Jaron Brook or something like that in the same category. So we are learning as we do, and also we have different challenges from the US. Like, for example, intellectuals in the US, we have different questions. Brazilians pose different questions than Americans do. So we are trying step by step, by studying, by taking the Ayn Rand University, building up our defenses and the moral defense of capitalism here. But it's an ongoing process. We are not ready yet.
You're getting there. You're moving there.
Yeah.
Hey, we don't even have a Jaron Brook in America. He moved to the Republic of Puerto Rico. I'm joking. But you did interview him, according to Bonnie in the chat, May 26th on YouTube. Everyone go watch that. I'll be looking forward to catching up. Great having you on the show. Thank you so much for this wonderful conversation.
Thanks for the invitation.
And maybe we'll catch up once the election results are actually final. Coming up at 9 p.m. UK time today, it's HBTV with Harry Binswanger on objectivism in one sentence. That's the topic. Objectivism in one sentence. Sounds like a short episode. Maybe should be a tweet. Anyway, we'll find out what's going on with that. Oh, invite Dr. Binswanger to Brazil. He'll set everybody straight real fast. All right. Thank you all for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow for the Daily Objective. And is there a place people can follow you, Mateus?
Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna leave on the comments below on this episode. You can find everything we've translated so far at Objectivismo Brasil Oficial. In YouTube, we have Instagram as well, Objectivismo Brasil. So it's really easy to find us there.
I've been to Brazilian restaurants and I've met Brazilian women, and I have a feeling your Instagram account will do wonderfully. All right. See you all back tomorrow for the Daily Objective, and goodbye.